everyone, and a very warm welcome to European Digital Day 2021. My name is Hannah Wise. I'm a journalist and moderator, and it's my great pleasure to host the event today. We've got some wonderful content coming up, great panel discussions with some super speakers sharing their expertise and knowledge on the digital transformation. But before all of that, it's also my great pleasure to welcome Diana Engedschwiler here to the studio. Diana, you're the Senior Director, Head of Public Dialogue and Digital Day for Digital Switzerland. So you know all about digital transformation and what we're trying to do here in Switzerland. What is the idea, though, about a European Digital Day?
So the idea of a European Digital Days is about creating awareness in European countries for the public that technology, innovation, digitalization is really important, and to make sure that the public is very open-minded towards those topics. We saw in the World Competitive Ranking that just came out, I think, a few weeks ago, we saw that the readiness of a country is a big factor. And the readiness is also entails the readiness of the public, how they feel about technology. And that's why it's super important if we want to thrive as a continent to make sure that they're aware of it, but then also are upskilling and so on.
And that's certainly something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But this started here in Switzerland, and now there are 8 countries involved. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's actually crazy. 8 countries. Well, in 2019, we heard that Sweden is based on our digital day. They're doing their own digital day. So we flew over to Sweden to visit. And there I suggested, why not starting a steering group with other countries. So we started with 3 countries, and then it expanded and expanded. Also, the Serbian Premier Minister, Ana Brnabić, is visited the Digital Day in Switzerland several times, and other countries. Actually, China delegation came, France. So many people came to see it because it's a very unique idea. And now, yeah, last year, those countries signed a letter of intent, and now we're doing digital days across Europe.
Okay, well, why don't we just put a pin in that for the moment and actually hear from our colleagues across Europe and their hopes for European Digital Days this year. And I think we'll start with hearing from Piotr from Poland.
What I expect from our digital future is a world in which technology solves our major problems of humanity, like climate change, aging society, or lack of opportunities for people with disabilities, different skin color, or those living in rural areas. So, in our digital future, I see technology as a great tool to solve our problems.
At the end of the day, what we all want is, on one side, a prosperous economy and a happy population and a better environment on our earth. And I mean in 10, 20, 30 years. And digital innovation is one of the ways, if not the one way to go to reach all these objectives.
Ich wünsche mir von der digitalen Zukunft, dass wir uns um die ganze Welt vernetzen, austauschen und voneinander lernen. Mehr von zu Hause arbeiten, dadurch mehr Zeit für unsere Familie haben und weniger Verkehr auf den Straßen produzieren. Ich wünsche mir, dass uns die Digitalisierung hilft, smarte Lösungen für unsere Umweltprobleme und den Klimawandel zu finden. Und dass weiterhin der Mensch im Mittelpunkt steht und nicht die Maschine oder der Algorithmus.
What I want from the digital future is that technology helps us to improve the life of millions of people around the world and to help us to solve the climate problem.
What I want from digital future is to leave no one behind. I want a world where digital skills will give a chance to compete on the global level and where our economy can play with the big players.
What I would like to see from our digital future is ultimately a better place for all humans to live, where our human capacities are augmented by digital tools, but also where we have a very inclusive way of using digital tools for the benefit of all people. That would be my vision.
So some very high hopes there, Diana. What are the main themes around European Digital Day?
So the main theme is upskilling and reskilling. You can imagine to coordinate one topic across 8 countries is not that easy. But we agreed on that because it's one of the most important topics that we have to address in Europe. I can only speak now on numbers in Switzerland, but to give you an example, there are statistics that say in 2028, we have a lack of 35,000 people in ICT work environments. So 35,000 is a lot. So where do we get them from? From abroad? Well, they have the same issue. So yeah, I think we really need to focus on upskilling and reskilling, and that's why this is the main topic.
And I guess we can learn from other countries and from what they're doing.
Exactly, and that's the purpose also of this European Digital Days.
Where do you see the biggest wins for Europe?
Well, actually, I need to repeat myself. I think this is the biggest win if we make sure we push the talents to make sure also in school they learn digital skills, but then also solution orientation, and they get kind of this glimpse of how innovation works. I think this will be a huge win. Obviously, some countries have it easier to implement it. Some countries are more complicated, but I think that will be the biggest win.
All right. Well, finally, let me put the same question that we put to our colleagues across Europe to you. What is your hope for a digital future?
My hope is in education. I really hope that people get access to high quality education in the tech industry or in innovation, and this very easy access, and also that it doesn't cost a lot. So it's not about how much money you have. You have similar opportunities than everybody else, and I think that will also push our talents forward.
All right, let's take the first steps then, Diana. Thank you very much indeed for now.
Thank you.
We've got 4 top-level discussions coming your way, all of them looking at the key issues facing our societies and businesses. First up, how to make Europe a digital powerhouse. And joining me for this, I'm delighted to welcome our panelists. We have Maria Ilic, who is president of the Serbian Games Association, or of the board of the Serbian Games Association. We also have Evelyn Metzen, who is director of government affairs and public policy for the DACH region at Google. And Magnus Tarman is managing partner for McKinsey in Europe. Welcome to all of you. It's great to have you on board. Magnus, if I can start with you, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to digital transformation?
Well, first of all, maybe I can just agree with you on the importance of the topic of making Europe a digital powerhouse for at least 2 reasons. One is that it's central to the competitiveness of Europe. We're frankly falling behind a little bit compared to, in particular, the US and China on many dimensions of digitalization. And secondly, when you look at what's happening to jobs, almost all jobs are going to have a very meaningful component of digital technology in them. And if we don't give people the skills to handle that, we're going to have many people left behind and being less relevant in the job markets. So in my experience, and when I look across the companies that I work with in terms of digital transformations, I would say at least 4 things come to mind as either you can phrase them as challenges or success factors. Number 1 is to be incredibly clear of why you're doing this and to have a story that engages the whole company. And in my opinion, that story needs to be anchored in your customers and what you're trying to do for your customers. Number 2, really investing in data, the architecture and the platform for data, because if you don't do that up front, you're going to run into trouble later. Number 3, really moving at speed. There's a lot of talk about agility and sprints and things like that. It really matters. There's a saying by Mario Andretti, I think the old Formula 1 driver, which is, if everything feels under control, you're not going fast enough. And I think that actually it does apply to many of these things. But then the 4th one is by far the biggest. And if I think of all the situations I've been involved in and seen, the number 1 rate limiting factor is talent and capabilities. Because you constantly run into the fact that you don't have enough people who are driving the change. And you don't have the ability of the organization to adopt and adapt. And I think you need 2 things. You need a cadre of very, very deeply skilled excellent people to be at the forefront, and then you need to upskill the entire organization over time, and that is a very, very big challenge.
And when I hear you say, Magnus, adopt and adapt, and I think about what you said at the beginning about the United States and China really outstripping us when it comes to digital transformation, what these two countries have is the ability to take risk. And Maria, maybe if I can ask you about risk taking, obviously in being involved in the gaming industry, you must be very used to taking risks, and it's easy to say that you can take risks, but how easy is it to do it in practice? And do we do enough of that here in Europe?
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, in general, not only in gaming industry, but in general, building a business actually takes both work and risks. So it goes hand in hand. And at first, when you start your own business, you simply aim to play safe and live through the first year. That's a known fact to all of us, but at least that's what you think, that you're playing safe, because at the time you don't get that there are various types of risks all the time. But some risks are more dangerous than others. So I think that the moment when you decide to call yourself a risk taker is when you actually realize that your safe comfort zone becomes boring and won't bring any new excitement or potential bigger ecosystem role for your company. So although you will never be able to completely eliminate business risk, actually proactively planning for it can help you minimizing it. And the key in helping you save money and time, as well as the reputation, is actually the awareness of potential risks. And once you accept it as your everyday reality, I think it is much easier to deal with it. For me, actually taking risks in business is completely normal. And if we try to put that into the perspective of Europe as a risk taker, I think that somehow my impression is actually that here in Europe, we are more reliant on our countries and societies to take care of ourselves instead of taking the responsibility and risk on our own. So, and especially the risk of our potential failures. So in business, it is very simple. You completely understand that your actions are responsible for the outcome, either successful or failure, but it looks like that we don't get that our actions, for example, in the environment or society are leading to pretty much the same. And I believe that the only way of changing this is changing this awareness is through prevention in the first place, through advocacy activities and education as well. It is actually a very complex issue, especially because it requires a mindset change, but I don't think it's impossible.
Okay, well, before we cross over to you, Evelyn, let me just pick up on that point, Maria, with Magnus. When it comes to culture and developing a really good business landscape for us to take risk and to really drive change, Magnus, should this be led by the public or private sector? Because this is a key point.
Yeah, I think if you look at digitalization, which includes risk-taking, of course, I would say, in some ways it has to be a team sport. And I don't think I would actually include one more constituent, because I think the most important thing is to get the ecosystem working in a good way together. And I would call out the private sector, of course, and business, which is responsible for driving its own digitization. But the other two critical stakeholders are governments, but also the education system. And I think the education system needs to be rewired for lifelong learning, shorter courses, more targeted, etc. Governments play a very, very important role, I think, in a number of different ways. One, I think they can play a big role in setting a very high ambition and a vision for their country when it comes to this. Secondly, I think they can create the right incentives and the right environment to promote risk-taking, to promote furthering your capabilities. And I think also they can play a big role in actually leading the way. There is a lot to do still in terms of digitizing our public sector and to lead by example on that. But no one holds the key to do this by themselves. I think it needs to. I think that the dialogue and the alignment of these three constituencies is the most important thing.
Evelyn Metzen, we're thrilled to have you with us on this panel as well. And let's get your perspective from Google then. How can companies take a lead?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the question. And I guess I'll be building on what Magnus said. There is actually a whole lot that the public sector itself can do to promote digital skills. And in fact, these days, this is top priority for all of us. For example, research by both Google and McKinsey shows that more than 90 million workers in Europe, Middle East, and Africa may need new skills for the jobs of the future. And for some, that will, of course, mean changing careers altogether. And workers are insecure about their future, fear this development. So we as companies have to show the opportunities and take the workers along by enabling this. At Google, we believe that technology must serve everyone, no matter their location, race, age, or education. And that's why already 6 years ago, we began our Grow with Google program to train individuals in new sought after digital skills. And today, we're actually quite proud to say that we trained more than 17 million people in EMEA. Well, due to the pandemic and the increasingly tenuous job situations, we have seen a demand for our training skyrocket by 300%. And we experienced an unprecedented acceleration of a trend that we anticipated, all of us, I think, did, the companies, but that materialized over only a few months rather than over the span of a couple of years. So building on our own innovative tools and training programs at Google, we're constantly expanding our efforts to support job seekers throughout Europe. For example, we launched a new Google Career Certificates that will help people master job-ready skills in rapidly expanding fields and allow businesses to fill the seats of their in-demand positions. And those certificates help learners with no prior experience to work in new industries and job profiles. For example, in IT support, project management, and data analytics. And we constantly keep on developing courses of changing job profiles in various industries.
Evelyn, do you actually target, sorry to interrupt, but do you actually target women, for example? Because when you look at statistics, women in STEM subjects, and that is when it comes to education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, only 22% of students are actually actively studying these topics are women. Do you try to change that through your certificates?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned it. That would actually have been my second sentence here.
Sorry.
That we especially, no, it's perfect. This is, it all goes hand in hand. This is really true what you're mentioning. So we've seen this, that the proportion of women in MINT professions is already rather small, right? And in the pandemic, we saw that women are at even more risk now. So we are targeting our programs, especially to girls and women. And we have various programs already cooperating with schools, but we're now also going out into cities, working with mayors, etc., to especially make sure that women grow in those skills, in new technologies and digital skills, but also in the leadership to make them more secure in those job profiles.
And Maria, what about from your perspective? What kind of impact would it make to your industry if there were more women, or certainly just more diversity within your industry?
Yeah, thanks for asking, because there is actually the known fact that in gaming industry is around 24 or 25% of women only in totally in the world. I can proudly say that in Serbia, that number is a bit higher. It's around 1/3 of our Serbian gaming ecosystem actually are women. Basically how we did it is purely through advocacy and talking about it and employing more women and just encouraging them to enter the industry they thought they can't. In general, those 25% of women in gaming industry in the world is actually unusually low figure compared to the other creative and cultural sectors. And having this factor in mind, this also with a very low percentage of girls in the industry in general, you can imagine how low the percentage of women in leadership positions is. So it's almost non-existent. And this simply has to change, not purely because of this diversity or gender parity, but because we simply do make a difference in business itself. And there are many researches concluding that companies with greater gender diversity, both within their workforce or leadership positions, are significantly more profitable than those without. Also, we have different leadership styles comparing to men, etc., etc. So we bring simply different perspectives, skills, and experience into the workforce.
How do we make these topics more inclusive, Magnus? What about other excluded groups? Because, you know, when we talk about digitalization and a transformation, you always think about youth and energy, but there are so many skills in older professionals as well. How do we involve everyone in this?
Well, maybe first, just sort of linking back to the previous question, I think this is a huge deal, and I agree, Maria, with your comments. And we have been part of doing that research that shows that that companies are more successful with more diversity. I recently went to Silicon Valley with a group of CEOs, and we visited a number of exciting startups, and we had picked startups that were relevant for these industries that they were in. But there was quite a broad range of industries represented, and we must have seen 70 people as part of these teams, and there were probably 2 or 3 women. If you look at VC funding in the US in the last few years, 85% of all VC funding went to all male founder teams. 2% went to all female founder teams, and 13 to mixed teams or something. And as most of these startups and new business buildings have significant technology components, we really are risking going backwards on the gender issue, which is a big issue. When it comes to your other point, this is frankly about just creating a more positive story around what's going on here, because I think you see, and here I am disappointed in at least governments where that I see that we're not on our front foot trying to tell a positive story of what's happening, because this is fantastic. So many boring, monotonous jobs are disappearing, and the jobs that are created are more interesting and more value adding. But many people are in some sort of a negative loop. The robots are taking our jobs, et cetera, et cetera. There will be positive job growth from this. There will be net job creation. But we have to get a positive narrative where people say, listen, this is exciting. I want to be part of it. It may not be as difficult as I think. Google, other people are providing all kinds of easy ways to learn. But instead, I think we're creating a sense of fear, and I think it's fixable. But this is where government, in terms of the digital day and all of this, is a great step in that direction. The whole point, I think, is to get the public awareness up and people's appetite up in terms of being part of this, because otherwise, frankly, you become, as you say, irrelevant in the labor market.
Can I
Absolutely,
expand
please,
on that real quick? Because I think you are right to a certain extent that we're not really telling the full positive story. On the other hand, I can see how governments and government entities are working with companies to actually change that. Take the EU Commission's Pact for Skills, for example, where sort of not only Google, but many companies are a partner of. And companies partner with employment agencies on a regional and national level. And I think they all understood that they need this cooperation with NGOs, the public sector, and the government to change this. And so I wouldn't say that the glass is half full. I think they see the opportunities, and we need them too to actually scale, to really reach everyone, especially the underrepresented groups. And yeah, I just wanted to add that.
No, I agree, Evelyn. I don't mean to be overly negative, but I think there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do on this front.
Well, let me put it to you then, Evelyn. What should we be doing to make Europe a digital powerhouse?
And I think this also goes back, Magnus already alluded to it. It's really understand that we're in this together, that we need the government, the public sector, and the NGOs and the workers or the individuals working together on this and forming alliances wherever we can to tell that story and to make sure that the opportunities are actually seen and that the access to the opportunities. I think that's really important. Those who don't have access to full-time education, the small and medium-sized companies, they need to understand that embarking on the digital transformation journey is not just, a challenge, but that it's doable. And we can only do this together.
But when speed is of the essence, Maria, what's your advice?
Well, basically, I agree to most of the things that have been said. I would like just to add another angle, and it's I think that Magnus already explained it a bit, but I think that we should advocate for embracing technology to the real people, because I can see a lot of fear of technologies and new stuff. So I think it is important to add that angle too, to talk a lot about why technology is great and how it can help us in everyday life, and just to advise for embracing it.
And what about digital days, such as the events that we have? How important are they? Magnus is obviously a fan. He mentioned them earlier. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that we should just share the topics that you have just mentioned and share all our findings from our old perspectives. That way, we are going to be able to progress faster.
And a final word to you, Evelyn.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to spread the word, right? To tell that positive narrative and to make everyone understand that there are the opportunities, and that without technology, we can't get where we want. Not sort of when it comes to skills, not when it comes to sustainability, not when it comes to our economic progress. And I think this is the best forum to spread the word.
Thank you all very much indeed for joining us. Evelyn Medson, Maria Ilic and Magnus Tarman, thank you all for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to talk now to Philipp Rösler, who joins us on the move now. Philipp Rösler is the former Vice-Chancellor and Minister of Economics and Technology in Germany. He's also involved in a digital venture in Asia and has developed digital initiative in Vietnam as well. And it's our great pleasure to have you with us. And I guess you're very well placed then to tell us, Philipp, what can we learn here in Europe from Asia? Because Asia is very much seen as a leader when it comes to digitalization.
Yeah, so first of all, Vietnam and East Asia and Asia is very entrepreneurial. So, and in addition to this, very dynamic, vibrant, and creative. And I think that's all the nice ingredients you do need for good business in the real world as well as in the digital world. And in Asia, they try to check it out from the very early beginning. They are so-called early adopter, and they don't ask if it's allowed. They say, as long as it's not forbidden, let's do it.
What about education and technology and all the things you need in order to get digitalization going? We've been hearing from people during the European Digital Day about the importance of education.
So I think education is really key. If you do see the next generation, the young generation, they all grew up with technology in life, in education, and we have to pick up. But at the same time, we have to train them how to do this, how to use it. And they don't need maybe the capacity for coding, but at least to understand how a computer works, what software is about, what hardware is, and how it works together. I think these are the basics. We have to educate our kids, the next generation, so that they can really grow into the era of fourth industrial revolution, which means everything which will digitalize, because we do need the digitalization and we do the next generation who's doing this.
Can you give us some examples of how Vietnam, for example, is leading when it comes to digitalization and how it compares with Europe?
They have an excellent infrastructure. You have almost everywhere 4G grid for the telecommunication. They have 97 million people. Average age is around 30. And almost each one of these 97 million people has a smartphone, not only mobile phone, a smartphone. And they are trained to use it for public applications for passports, but also for private use like entry tickets, banking, and so on. So they learn in their day-to-day life how to live and how to use digital things. And that makes them very entrepreneurial in addition to good entrepreneurial digital startup entrepreneurs in Asia.
And so do you think that's very different to how things are in Europe? Do we need to be more tech savvy on a day-to-day basis?
Education is one thing in school, it's English, and again, how technology is in general working. But at the same time, if you would like to have more entrepreneurial spirit, you cannot go into school and have a front lesson about education. What we should do is talking about success stories. We need sort of leadership for entrepreneurship by role model. And I think this is critical. And in Asia, all the people who are successful in the digital business, they are celebrated as heroes. And every young man and woman wants to be like the heroes are. So this is real leadership with role models. So they try to become also a digital entrepreneur. In Europe, we are sometimes a bit cautious with our success and we have been successful, but, and I think we need a sort of different mindset in order to foster and push forward the entrepreneurial spirit in Europe.
All right, so maybe Europe could learn a little about storytelling and leadership when it comes to the digital transformation. So what are the biggest challenges then that you're facing in Vietnam when it comes to that?
I think it's almost the same as we have it across the world. It's a question of having enough skilled workforce. So as you mentioned, I'm chairman of a small venture fund and we have around 20-25 portfolio companies. And if I talk with the portfolio companies, they always say, oh, we need more coder. We need more people who can work with the software, who can shape our applications, who can shape our business model. So it's really that we do need skilled workforce. And then it brings us back to education. That demonstrates how important education is for the entire growth of an economy. And so we're working on this by highlighting the good environment for skilled workforce in Vietnam, but in East Asia entirely. And I think we should do the same in Europe as well. Really, this question of skilled workforce is quite critical.
Yes, so how do we close the skills gap then? Because obviously it comes down to education, but we can't just put all our hopes on the future generations. How do we deal with that on a daily basis today?
I do know that there's an ongoing discussion also in Switzerland to have a sort of digital lesson, sort of mandatory in the schools in Switzerland. And this makes totally sense. Again, I'm not an expert to say what exactly they should learn there, like coding. I think this is maybe not enough, but really how to understand technology, because everyone is using technology, but the knowledge is way smaller than the time we are spending with our technology. So it would be very good to have this maybe in school, in the universities, and there you can even talk not only about the technology, but also the business model, which are potential for this exact technology. Let's say blockchain, for example, sort of new technology. What can you do as entrepreneurs with this new technology?
But what about our generation? I'm no longer at school. You know, how much emphasis should we be putting on lifelong learning?
That's also critical because, again, era of forced industrial revolution means everything what can be digitalized will be digitalized sooner or later. But second characterization of the era of the forced industrial revolution is the unprecedented speed. So we, in our generation, have to pick up with the speed. And we need some trusted sources where we can look into it and say, so that's how it runs, right? Let's speak for a moment on blockchain, right? To explain people in our age, blockchain is not trivial. And we need a source which we can trust, where we can learn something about technology. And it's not sufficient to have only things like Wikipedia, which is nice, but I think we need some sources, and we should have also some media creation around this kind of education. And it turns out that in Asia, these 1, 2, 3, 4 minute clips are very successful because people will learn a lot of things in these 3 minutes. They can learn how electro engine is running, but also how blockchain is functioning. So I think this is quite good, and we need more from that for our generation.
And can you just tell us, what are your hopes for the future then when it comes to digital transformation, both in Vietnam and in Europe?
I'm, as always, optimistic. And I do see that the next generation is really used to use technology. And I think they by themselves, they are asking for more lessons, new lessons in school, in the universities. They are curious. They want to check out new business models, new technologies. And I think if they get the right support from the legal framework, from the right infrastructure, as well as from the investment side and from academics, I think then we can create a great story out of this and turn it really into the good and let benefit the society from digitalization.
So if you were part of our audience today, what is the one thing that you would tell our audience to help drive digital transformation wherever they live?
First, identify good role models, talk about role models. And second, that's even maybe more important even, try to become by yourself a role model. Become an entrepreneur and create a success story and then talk about, and then be a witness of the success and the benefit for society of digitalization.
You make it sound so easy. Philip Roessler, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
You're watching European Digital Day, and it's great to have you with us. Did you know that 65% of primary school-aged children entering education today will actually end up working in jobs that don't even exist yet? It's incredible to think about. But the World Economic Forum in a recent report has warned that if we're not ready for this change, then we could miss out on the opportunities it will afford. So how can Europe stay ahead of the curve? Well, for this next panel discussion, I'm thrilled to welcome a top-level panel, and we have Prime Minister Ana Brnabić from the Republic of Serbia. Prime Minister, it's great to have you with us. We have Mark Valder, who is the founder of Digital Switzerland and the CEO of Renier, and Clemens Himpele is the Chief Information Officer for the city of Vienna, whose aim it is to make Vienna the digitalization capital of Europe. It's wonderful to have you all with us today. Prime Minister Brnabić, what is Serbia doing then to prepare for this future generation?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for the invitation. It's wonderful to participate again in the Digital Day in Switzerland. We have actually, when I put digitization as the primary focus of my government in order to prepare especially our youth for the future, but also to make Serbia's economy more competitive, we have actually learned so much from Switzerland and Mark. And when we established an organization called the Digital Serbia Initiative, the first meeting was held in Zurich. So we are closely cooperating with Switzerland, and I'd like to thank you for everything that you have done to support us. From then on, we have I think moved at extraordinary speed. And our focus was on the reform in the education sector to enable that our youth is more competitive, much more competitive than they are today, and that they really are the foundation stone for our future development. So back in 2017, we have introduced coding and programming as mandatory subject in primary school. So today, kids, when they're 10 years old, they start learning coding in their primary school. And this year, we have marked the first generation of primary school kids leaving school with the full knowledge of coding, such as program languages such as Scratch and Python. We have also increased the number of specialized IT classes in our secondary schools. We have increased the capacity of our technical faculties, and thanks to all of these things, our IT industry is growing at an incredible rate of 20 to 25% year on year. And just finally to mention, two another important things that we have done. We have introduced completely new subject called Digital World, which kids start learning when they enroll to primary school, which is when they're 6 or 7 years old, to really understand the world around them, but also to understand the challenges, the security concerns, and all of that. And then so this school year, this academic year, which started 1st of September, we have introduced basics of AI into primary school. So we are really trying to focus perhaps all of our efforts onto the education.
Thank you very much. Mark, you founded Digital Switzerland, some 7 years ago. How is Switzerland positioned when you hear what Prime Minister Brnovich has had to say? And how well prepared are we for the future?
First of all, what Prime Minister Brnovich just outlined is truly remarkable. The speed and the commitment the government in Serbia has towards digital transformation, I think, is a role model for any country I see. Secondly, I think it's fundamentally, and then I come to Switzerland, fundamentally important to start at the very beginning, and the very beginning means our children. It is hugely important what our children learn at school around digital topics. Now, you might argue it is not so important if they really learn how to code. I do believe, yes, it is, but there is a big debate going on. But if I compare the schedule my daughter has, who is 13 years old, to my schedule at school, so this was 40 years ago, 4 decades ago, it's almost the same. As we see, more than 60% of the jobs will be jobs that do not exist today. So you have to do exactly what Prime Minister Brnovich forced in Serbia, to really start at the very, bottom with the kids in school. And this is truly remarkable. I am afraid Switzerland is being too slow in terms of transforming education. Now, as somebody who leads quite a large enterprise with roughly 8,000 employees here in Switzerland in the media industry, which has been totally transformed, you might even say disrupted, you see that speed is crucial.
So Mark, who should be driving it forward then?
Well, on different levels, I think, first of all, we have a very federalistic system here, canton by canton in Switzerland, that makes things usually slow, unfortunately. So this has to be a top-down decision where you say those 26 different cantons have to create kind of a common sense that kids need to adapt faster with digital skills. What exactly that is, let's discuss, but definitely we are too slow with kids. I would even say, in a playful way, kindergarten, kids like to play around with robots and computers. That is something different than just hanging in front of your iPhone and doing Snapchat all day. That's not what I talk about. It's understanding what basically digitization is. And by the way, the next big topic is coming up. It's called metaverse. And I think kids should understand what this means, how they can use, what's behind the screen, etc. Because, and this is fundamentally important, if kids would be more sensitive to new jobs, to new skills, they would have different interests than they have at the moment. At the moment, they do try to learn and imitate jobs that are already existing. I think we should bring them into new ideas, a new sensitivity towards digital tools. That is hugely important. And we see, by the way, in the Central Eastern European countries, that there's a lot of skill potential there. I think the question there, Anna, will be, is there going to be a brain drain? Are people leaving Poland and Serbia in order to go to, let's say, other countries? Or are these countries able to keep the strong tech and tech business people within their country?
Thank you, Mark. I think we'll develop some of the challenges and how we can address them in just a moment. But Clemens, let me bring you in on this. You've heard that speed is of the essence, of course. You've heard about the success stories. Where is Austria in all of this?
Well, thank you for the invitation, and I can just repeat what Mark already said. It's quite impressive was what Ms. Banbic told us about Serbia. What we have now, but we are not the first mover in this topic, is the infrastructures at the schools, which means the wireless LAN and the computers. But this is crucial because if you don't have the infrastructure, everything else will not work. Let me add maybe two topics to the discussion. I mean, the question is, what tasks will be done in the future for the jobs, and how will we organize our all day and labor life? Because I think it's very important to understand that the technological progress is the basis of our wealth, and the technological progress is not neutral. We have to design it. We have to decide in which way we want to live, what is the kind we will earn our money in the future. And this debate is just starting right now. So that means that you, of course, need the technological skills, which was mentioned before. And Austria has to do a lot in this topic because we are not the first movers. But the second thing is you need a broader understanding what happens with the new media. For example, Mark mentioned the new media. We are talking about the filter bubbles. We are talking about artificial intelligence. What does it mean if an algorithm has decided that you, I don't know, don't get the money, don't get the job, don't get whatever. What does it mean in our all-day life? And I think this is the broader context the youth have to learn, and they will learn it much quicker than we did. I hope so.
Clemens, if I can just ask you to maybe paint a bit more of a picture for our audience. When we talk about jobs of the future, and obviously we don't know what they are, what do you imagine them to be?
Well, I mean, some things are quite sure that we need more skills in technological topics. I think we know that very well. What we don't know yet exactly is how the future will be organized. There is this familiar note from John Maynard Keynes, an economist 100 years past, and he said that there will be no economic problem in the year 2030, 100 years later, due to the progress in industry and the technological progress. And the question is how we organize that. If it really means that we have much more wealth in the future because of the new technologies, then the question will be, what is paid work, what is not paid work? And the differences are quite big now. And to understand this, I mean, what is the problem with digitization? It's the technology, but that's just one topic. The second one is the organization in the departments and in the companies. And this, I think, is often a huge problem. We have then the technology in itself. And this is, I think that you have to understand, we have a lot of persons, they can code and program new platforms, whatever they need. But if you want to introduce this in a city department, for example, you need persons there to understand why we need to change the organization of that department. And these persons have to understand the technological progress in one hand, but much more important is the organizational topics they have to understand, because otherwise we will not profit from digitalization.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister Brnabic, you talk about the education and starting young, and everybody is obviously admiring hugely the achievements you've made. How concerned are you about the brain drain? How worried are you that people educated in Serbia will then leave with these skills?
I have to say that I was initially, when I became the prime minister, or when I joined the government, and I first joined the government in 2016 as the Minister of Public Administration and Local Government. At the time, my focus was on reforming the public administration in order to fully introduce 100% e-government, in order to make it more transparent, more efficient, and to make it available to citizens and businesses 24/7, 365 days a year. So I've started doing this as a Minister of Public Administration. Today, we have a very different public administration. Whatever could be done paperless is paperless. We have started introducing e-government as of 1st of June 2017. And to date, we have saved 230 million papers. So when you think about all of the saved paper, the trees, the electricity, the water to produce that paper, you can also say that today, because green agenda is on one of the top priorities for all of us, e-government should also be viewed, and I direct this especially towards the EU and Brussels administration. It should be viewed as part of the green transition as well. But remind me now the question.
I was just asking how you tackle the brain drain.
I was initially very worried about the brain drain. I'm not so worried anymore, because we have managed, by providing a clear signal that as the government, this is what we see as the future of Serbia, providing also a clear signal that this is what we are going to invest in the future, providing more funds to start up innovation companies, investing into infrastructure such as science and technology parks across Serbia, investing into new research institutes, and the latest research institute that we have established is the AI Institute. We have actually managed to reverse the brain drain in this field. So we have now more people coming back to Serbia to relocate, open their startup companies, or work for some of the increasing number of research and development centers that are being opened in Serbia by foreign companies. Then we have people leaving, for example, for education to go abroad. So I feel actually very confident today that if we continue this way, and we already have some head advantage, if we continue to be as brave as we have been to date, that we will manage to actually bring more people, young foreigners, to Serbia to live and work from here.
Well, does this concern you then, Clemens? Because Austria really benefits from these talented, skilled people coming to Austria currently. Does that worry you in the future?
Well, no, we have to do our homework. The same Serbia has to do, and that's fine. We have a lot of persons from Eastern Europe, of course, especially in Vienna. Vienna is often named as one of the most livable cities in the world. We have to transfer this also in the digital sphere. Yeah? When Anna mentioned just before the e-government, what does it mean to be the most livable city in the world from a perspective of a city administration? This means that we make it as easy as possible for our inhabitants to organize their all-day life in terms of kindergarten, of public transportation, of parks, and so on. And the same has to be done with the e-government topic. Yeah? We need to make it possible for our inhabitants to make it as easy as possible to have their contacts with the public authorities. And that's what Anna just mentioned. And of course, I think Serbia did a lot in the past years, and that's very good, because in the end, we all live at the European continent, and it's quite better we have a good economic development here than we don't. So I'm not afraid that we will lose a lot of inhabitants. In the past 10 to 15 years, Vienna grew a lot. We have almost 2 million inhabitants right now. So there isn't enough children and young people in the city, but of course we have to educate them, and we have to bring them to the new technologies.
Mark, where could Europe improve the most then going forward?
Europe has to improve on all levels. I think it's quite clear that we have to start with the kids first. Second, students, universities, of course, they have to be very attractive to talents. They have to offer the right studies. Next one is, of course, the big corporates. Corporates need to survive. You know, we have seen many corporates, large institutions disappear because they haven't done or weren't able to do the digital transformation, especially in the media sector, but other sectors as well. Think of the retail sector, travel sector, etc. Then we need, of course, the startup ecosystem to be very vibrant, to be very attractive. I think, by the way, to Prime Minister Brnabić, yes, I would agree. Attractive cities, and Belgrade, for example, is an attractive city. It's a fun city to be in, are attractive for talents, and talents go where it's fun to live. So if you give them a great framework in order to create startups, etc., they will be there. We have seen that in many other places as well. Then, of course, the administration. Then, of course, the infrastructure of a country. I give you, it sounds like a joke, but so we're sitting here in Zurich. Whenever I had video conferences with our companies in Africa, they had more stable connections than when I did video conferences with Germany. So think about infrastructure and think about the problem of Germany. Nothing new, and I don't want to criticize Germany or be sarcastic, not at all. But this gives you kind of, in terms of infrastructure, an interesting picture that might surprise. So again, I think on all levels, Europe has to really, if this would be a soccer match between the US, China, and Europe, if these three teams would be playing, I know usually there's two teams playing against each other, but we have lost the first half. We're sitting in the locker room, getting out to the stadium again, and we have the second half, and we have to pick up speed.
I think that was a great analogy. You know, it is a game of two halves, so there's still plenty to play for. But you did hit on a really important topic, Mark, and that is technology. Do you, Clemens and Prime Minister Branovic, do you think that the technology is there to get us started on, you know, the world tomorrow?
And go first,
please.
The technology is there. I mean, of course, a lot of the companies are US based or based in China. But I want to add something to what Mark said. You know, we have a special way of living within Europe, and we need a framework. We need to create a framework that we can live the way we want to live in Europe, and that's up in the case of Austria up to the European Parliament, which is not so important to Switzerland and Serbia. But if we live together, I mean, we have a lot of inhabitants, we have a lot of capital within the European continent, and we have a lot of talents. That is not our problem. Of course, in the past, there was this American way of moving fast and breaking things. And this, I think, changed now because we need a more sustainable way of technology, and we need technology to help us to save greenfield gases and so on. And this, I think, might be a European way. We had the data protection guidelines. I'm not totally happy with it, but I'm happy with the idea that there might be a European framework and not a German one, an Austrian one, a Swiss one, a Serbian one, because that's the only way we can create a single market that really is vivid enough to have the power to say, okay, that's the way we want to live with technology, and that's the way we don't. Because I think we agree that the Chinese way and the way of the US Americans might be slightly different to the European way.
Absolutely. Prime Minister Branovic, a final word?
I would tend to agree. I think the technology is here. I think that Europe has a lot to offer in terms of, you know, as Mark said, in terms of the quality of life. I think there is just so much that there is an advantage in Europe. I think that, yes, I think that we need to rethink the strategy. I think that if we think about the future, immediate future, it's going to be, I think, completely in AI and perhaps probably in biotech and biomed. And for both of these, I think Europe is not equipped to be competitive with the US or with China. It has a very, very strict legislation, which on one hand is very good because it protects its citizens. But on the other hand, it stifles it's just not going to provide a room to grow for startups and innovation. So I think we need to rethink the strategy in order to stay competitive and at least, you know, when in some of the aspects of this game, it's a huge challenge, but I think it can be done. But we need to, I would even say Europe needs to wake up and understand that if we lose this competitiveness, you know, we will have to pay this. We'll have to pay a high price for it.
Hannah, do I get 60
absolutely.
seconds?
Of course you can.
The Digital Day has been founded for a clear reason. And the reason was we do a lot for startups, we do a lot for education, maybe not enough, et cetera, et cetera. Administrations are working on it. But we want to reach out to the citizen. We want to reach out with the Digital Day to the fathers and mothers and the teachers, even the grandfathers. We want to reach basically into the kindergartens and the schools and to the normal, so-called normal people. That is extremely important. That's why we founded the Digital Day, besides the other programs that we are running. I'm really happy. And Prime Minister Brnabić said Europe needs to wake up. Europe is waking up. To finish this on a positive note, we do have 7 or 8 countries joining now, including the city of Vienna, joining the idea to bring out digitization in a positive way, not in a naive way. There is challenges, but in a positive way to the normal citizen. And that is huge. So from being a Digital Day in Switzerland, a small country, wealthy country, to a pan-national European digital kind of vision, I think is perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for those positive words to end with, Mark Walder. Thank you, Clemens Himpele. Thank you very much. And also our thanks indeed to Prime Minister Ana Brnabić from the Republic of Serbia.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Now, the digital transformation, which of course accelerated like many other things during the pandemic, means that some 85 million jobs around the world will completely disappear within the next 4 years. But before you start panicking, nearly an equal number of new occupations will emerge at the same time. So how do companies and organizations embrace this change? How should they develop the skills of their employees? And how do they attract new talent in the future? Well, our colleagues over at the Digital Poland Foundation have been working with their research partners, Deloitte and CIO Net, and have been looking at what leaders in Poland are doing in terms of developing skills.
Good afternoon. My name is Piotr Mieczkowski. I'm the Managing Director of Digital Poland Foundation. And in today's panel, we will talk about digital skills, what leaders think in Poland about digital skills, about the gap. And together with me, the distinguished guests from Deloitte, UPC, and CIONet community, we prepared a study in Poland on what leaders think about the lack of competences, what competences are missing, and how to close the competences gap. And together with me, there's Bartosz Górczyński. Hello, Bartosz. He's the Managing Director of CIONet. Monika Nowak-Toporowicz, CTIO from UPC Poland and Slovakia. Hello.
Hi.
And John Guziak, Partner Human Capital from Deloitte. Hello.
Hi, nice to see you.
So first, let me start with some data coming from our report that nearly 70% of the Poland leaders experience a digital skills gap, and for half of them, actually, it's a top 3 or top 5 priority, and they want to close the gap within 3 years. So my question to you is, is it only the case for digital leaders, or is it the case for everyone? Will this phenomenon grow? And do we really have the digital skill gap, as the leaders are saying? Because maybe it's just the leaders, the digital leaders, that we ask. What's your take on that, on the data?
Maybe I would start from the business perspective. So I think we've done a big step because we just realized that we have a gap. So that's something which is very important, because we will never start learning once we don't understand that we have a gap. So yes, we do have this gap, and this is a common issue. This is not the leader's problem. It's not a business problem. It's a community problem. So our environment is changing. So we will need more and more of those so-called digital skills everywhere, not in a specific IT work, on digitalization work, just on a daily basis, even at school. So it's absolutely missing and needs to be, developed. I'm not sure if 2 or 3 years is enough to fill the gap. Definitely, we will fill this gap on a business level. I'm not sure if we will fill this gap in our community in general.
Okay, John, I mean, you are the leader of human capital. You have a broad perspective, not in terms of Poland, but also in the region. So what's your view on the gap?
Well, I think there's a real clarity that there's an extreme war on talent in Central and Eastern Europe, now numbering basically 18 countries that we're kind of monitoring. And that war on talent is directly related to these skill gaps. And I think what's interesting is that we're not only in a situation where there's a skill gap today, but it's actually going to get larger. We truly believe that almost every company today is actually digital or needs to be digital to survive. And the only way to do that is to basically get everybody up to skill in regards to digital. I'm really struck by just the conversations I'm having with candidates who are coming on board, expecting to join companies that will help them to actually have those skills as fast as possible. So I think from the war on talent, we can really see that actually companies themselves are really desperately looking for the support. And I think the pandemic has certainly accelerated it, but it was already very clear and very apparent right from the beginning.
Okay. Bartosz, I mean, you are managing the CIO.net Poland, a huge community, which gathers a lot of CIOs. What's your take on the skill gap? Whether it's only, the part, it's only because I talk with CIOs and that's the problem of IT guys, or are we talking also about the business side that, like Monika said, that also business, the marketing, the other departments are missing skills. What's your take?
Oh yes. So first of all, it's difficult after Monika described the situation because she is a great member of CIO.net and advisory board member. So what I can add, because I also observe the other markets, not only Poland, because we have CIO.nets in different countries. So they also have competency gaps. And lack of people, because it's not only competency gap, it is simply lack of people to be hired. And I'm surprised that it's not a number one challenge, because we should test if they lied or not, because when we discuss in CIO.net, it is number one challenge nowadays. And from Polish perspective, it's even worse, because those great Western European companies, they establish shared service centers in Poland, which we are proud of, and we are happy with those operations, but it creates more demand for IT resources than the Polish market would create. So yes, I confirm we have great demand for resources, but you also asked, Piotr, about the skills gaps on the business side. So in the models where we have business people deeply involved in development of digital solutions, digital business solutions, it's even more, and it's new dimension, I would say.
Okay, so the next category of questions we ask the leaders about, it was the what kind of skills they are missing, and there were 20 categories. And 20, I would say, answers. But on top of mind, as a most, I would say, the most desired skills were data analytics, which was answered by 63% of people, cybersecurity, software development, talent management, and innovation. Those are the top 6. On the other side, we also ask what kind of in terms of what areas are they missing those skills? Is it a product design? Is it marketing? And most of the answers were technical ones. That is artificial intelligence. It's a business intelligence. It's about cybersecurity, cloud computing on the edge or in the center, etc. But those were mainly the hard skills. Maybe because most of the answers we get from the CIOs. But I was really curious why we are missing those soft skills. Because so many people talk about, soft skills, the creativity, collaboration, negotiation, building multicultural teams. So those kind of skills we were missing. So my question is, what kind of skills are we missing? First of all, so is it the hard skill or the soft skills? And if so, then what are those skills that we are missing, and where should we focus on? What's your take? Maybe starting from Monika as in the previous question.
Yes, it's first of all, I don't know, Piotr, maybe you are right. Maybe we've been asking CIOs, maybe once we will be asking CIOs, the answer would be different. But we also think that this is a kind of Maslow pyramid. So we need to fix the basic first. And the basic, it's the hard skills which you are missing, the security, the development, the new development, ways of development. Then we go to the next level. It's how to put all those things together and then create an environment, an efficient environment to use the hard skills. But we are really fixing the basics in many areas. That's why I think people are so much focused on the hard skills as the primary issue. But that's not the only issue. I think, John, you can probably, from the HR perspective, you can add to what I said with the soft skills and how this will evolve going forward.
And Monica, I think it's interesting what you said is I think the Maslow hierarchy of needs is right now organizations and companies need as much information to be able to make the right decisions. That's why data analysis is coming into play. They want to work with cloud. What surprised me that was cloud was actually lower in the list than actually where I personally think it should be. But I think what's really important is that if we're moving into this new way of work, where especially those individuals who have these specific types of skills don't want to come to the office, the reality is that the skills that they need to actually be effective are no longer just technical skills. And to give you an example, we've now worked with more than 14,000 people across Central Europe, and we've been able to see that, for example, agile methodologies are absolutely essential for teams to be able to work with these type of technologies. And I'm not referring just to IT teams. I'm referring to the fact is that we can see very, very clearly in HR, in marketing, no matter what organization right now that's moving into a hybrid way of work, this idea of having these methodologies very similar to agile are working better than anything else. And so I think that CIOs need to recognize the fact is, on one hand, that need for skills is really, really important. But if they don't provide the support and they don't provide a methodology for those people to work together, to be productive, and also to feel that they belong, they're going to have that skill for a day, and that skill is going to leave. And I think what we need to recognize is that. Yeah, Monica?
Yes. Let me add one more sentence. It's key to have such skills, but I think it's equally important to give people space to share this knowledge and to get this knowledge, because we cannot be over demanding as CIOs, asking them to, fill the gap without giving them enough space and time for this. So this is something what needs to be clear for all CIOs.
Yeah. Bartosz, do you want to add something?
I think that those figures clearly describe the level of maturity of the whole digital transformation area is. So, and it is not that optimistic currently, because it shows that all companies started digitization or transformation, however you call it, but the top managers of those companies, they focus on technical gaps, and they believe it's enough. So I'm a bit disappointed by those by this data, if I can say so. But in the real life, it is exactly that's what we observe. So many people companies with their maturity, they believe that filling the technology gap and starting with agile only in IT or only in few areas will solve the problem, forgetting, for example, about soft skills. So Piotr, that's sad story, but that's the status of that's the current state of the industry. But it's growing because of sorry for the product placement, but also because of the initiatives like Digital Poland, CIO-Net, with the help of Deloitte and involvement of UPC.
That's true. Now let's talk a little bit about how to close the gap. Since we know that there is a gap, we know there is an urgency, we know what skills we are missing. So we ask the question, how the companies should close the gap. And for example, what I find interesting is that the reskilling just get 13% of the answers. Outsourcing was like 9%. Most of the CIOs and shapers replied that it was the 57% replied that upskilling of the existing staff would be the best way to close the gap. The other answer on the second place with 80% was recruiting new top talents from the market. So actually upskilling and getting new people on board. On the other side, when we ask what are the best way for the upskilling, there were like 20 answers. like making a dedicated month which promotes lifelong learning, introducing tools which measure the skill gap, making some surveys, what kind of skills do I want as an employee, etc., etc. But on the top of the agenda, I see several answers, which is 70% reply that career path with mandatory training and necessary skills for a specific position. That was a top answer with 70%. On the second, as a second answer, it was they were looking for president, CEO, or somebody from the board who should be the ambassador, who promotes the skilling, who present the certification in the social media, in the internal communication, etc. So we need leadership. That was the answer actually, that we need the leadership to show that the skilling, we need the skilling in the company. Or there was also an answer to provide opportunity for employees to give feedback, what skills I'm missing, and what I want to be trained of. But what I found interesting is, we also answer, what about your budget? The skilling budget, the HR budget. Most of the answer was that, I think it was like almost 50%, that the budget will stay the same. 15 or 20% replied will increase. 10 something percent replied that it will get lower, and a couple percent replied will be, I don't have the answer, right? Because I don't know, because of some reason. So, but that struck me that, everybody is talking about the skill gap. On the other side, the HR budget are not growing, and we are missing the leadership. So from your side, how you see we could close the gap? What are the best ideas coming from UPC, from Deloitte, from the CIO community? What are the best ideas to close the gap? Maybe even within the budget that is already spent within the company. So what's your take? Maybe let's start with John, since you are having those perspective on the whole region, advising clients. How do you see, what are the best option to close the gap?
Well, I think that, first of all, I think what we have to recognize is that when we think about closing the gap, we need to think about what is it that companies are really trying to achieve right now. What they're trying to achieve right now is how can they basically reach out to the customer? How can they have that fantastic customer experience, but also how can they have that fantastic employee experience that really basically keeps these people? The first thing that companies are doing for sure is they're basically hiring people. The problem with that approach right now is that salaries are just escalating sky high, to the point where they're now compared, even for example, Poland is now compared to the West in many, many different areas. So therefore, our competitive edge as Central Europe is really starting to wane, in the sense of that basically trying to bring on more people who have these specific types of skills, that those salaries are really high. The second thing I also really want to mention is that we have basically created what we call the 4 scenarios of the worker-employee relationship. And one of them is actually that the employers themselves will fail to provide basically people these specific skills. So then in essence, his employees will request funds to actually do it for themselves. And I think we're moving into a situation where employees that are going to be going into those companies where in essence is there isn't that investment. It's not visible. It's not across the board that we want to help in upskill you. It's lots of words, but really no context. Those companies are going to start to have a lot of pressure coming from employees to say, well, if you're not going to upskill me, then I would like funds to actually be able to do that. We actually see in multiple countries around the world that presence already taking place. And so I think there's going to be a significant pressure between what the company says they would like to do and what they're actually doing. The second thing also I would like to also mention is that we need to recognize is that the youngest generation of people coming into the marketplace are already digital. Yeah, what we're really talking about is those existing employees right now who basically are, like ourselves, who, know what the smartphone is, but in essence can remember when we didn't have it. And I think this is the population specifically in Poland and Central Europe that we really have to take into consideration. And I want to give just a simple example of a company that I really think has done a great job. There's a very large pharmaceutical company, a Polish company, that, took a journey journey. They took the courage to say, we want to go digital, specifically in the area of HR. And due to the fact that the CEO really believed in the project, and due to the fact that the HR director had the guts and the balls, excuse my expression, to do it, in essence, is the entire organization changed. And actually, we did a webinar recently exactly on that case study with this pharmaceutical company. And I think that's it. You've got the CEO who says, we're going to go digital. You've got people who basically have the courage to move forward with it. And in essence, is the whole organization can learn from it. So I think it's much more about, it's not about training. It's about business decisions that make the whole organization shift into a more effective way of work.
Mm-hmm. If I could comment on this, because that's exactly important what you said, John, because we as human beings, we need to have a reason to learn and to absorb new skills. And this reason is key to trigger this education. So it's really, I agree, this is not so much about the training budget. Yeah. It's about showing people new possibilities together with this digital skills. And you are so right talking that we shouldn't be so much worried about the youngest because they know it. Yeah, they are already there. But to open the door for the even above 50 population, for people who has no skills now, and actually acquire not talent from the market, because that's going to be difficult or almost not possible to get talent from the market. There is no talent on the market which is available for, normal costs, which is, it's far too high. But we need to acquire people from the market, show them reason, give them skills, and let them educate, let them get this knowledge. So we need to create working environment, not necessarily acquiring talented people from the market, because they are already addressed.
One of the answers which I found really interesting was to offering our employees 13 minutes every week for learning. Because one of the CIO part of this CIO Net community mentioned that also on one of our meetings of the CIO Net community, mentioned that at the beginning, he had some bad experience thinking about it, because he was thinking, maybe I'm wasting my time, because during the business hours, I'm learning. So he felt a little bit guilty. But then he figured out that actually, hey, when I supposed to do it? I mean, after hours. So one of the idea that we asked, we asked the question, should employers offer this 30 minutes, let's say, window per week? And I think more than 20% agree that there should be some window within your business hours to spend some time on the learning. Even 5-15 minutes could be enough to learn just maybe even small skills. I see also some trend that you skip the long hour trainings, like couple months or even years, and you move on to like mobile event training, which you get like 3 minutes or 5 minutes per day, like on commuting, or just you have a break and you have like 5 minutes for training. But I'm curious now, Bartosz, what's your view from coming from CIO Net community? This 30 minutes was one idea. I think it was brought by Adam previously, in the PKO BP. But what about other ideas coming from community? What's your take on closing the gap? What are the best ideas that you see?
Yeah, I will have, let's say, again, boring comment about the maturity, and I'm happy because I'm as John, I'm my origin is the training industry, so that's where I come from, and exactly as John. So I see in this area, I see the huge growth of maturity within the companies. You mentioned the pharmaceutical company, so maybe it is Polpharma, which is the finalist of our Digital Excellence Awards this year. And they demonstrated a huge program where people learn from each other around digital aspects, not really the technical competencies. So we see more and more such projects and different techniques. I will not comment on 30 minutes training concept. If it worked for Adam Marciniak in PKO BP, that's great, but it's probably one of the techniques. What is really making me happy is the new types of sharing and learning are getting popular. So together with Monika was and her team was involved in our Interesting Tribes program, where people learn from each other around problem-solving process. So companies search for such mechanisms, different than the certification or certifying training, or we need more practical things. So I don't know, Monica, if you agree, but it was the time when you were looking also for something very unique in terms of knowledge sharing. And
that is true. But what is important is always this ultimate objective. So why are we doing this? We will not get anything without the reason. So if it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, guys, I don't think it's relevant. So we need to have a reason. We need to see benefits coming together with such digital skills. And it's easy to show it. We just need to show it to people, and they will engage by themselves, even without 30 minutes. They will find this 30 minutes in the afternoon, I'm sure.
But just if I can add one thing, though, I think, it's really interesting is when we actually ask companies specifically, what is the reason why they hesitate to move into digital? What's very interesting is 27% of them hesitate because they actually don't feel that the people have the capability to do it. And I think this is yes, Bartosz, it was actually Polpharma. Now, if I'm allowed to use the company, is that they basically
promote them. Let's promote them.
No, absolutely. I mean, I just did a podcast actually with Kasia Bienkowska. So, but the point is that is what struck me about their case was the fact is that they recognize that the only way to go digital was not that the technology was the only thing that needed to change. It was the roles and responsibilities of people. And I think that if we take a look at where we're moving into the future, it's not how do we take technology and just how do we make our existing work better? It's what exactly work should we do thanks to that technology? And I think it's that shift. However, if we've got 27% of the population saying, you know what, I'm hesitating to put this into place because I don't think our people can be able to do it, that's a big problem. And I think this is where we need more courageous leaders in Poland and Central Europe to say, you know what, I don't care what your age is. By the way, I'm 51, yeah? And the point is I don't care what your age is. I believe as long as you're hungry to learn, and you, as you said, Monica, we have context, then let's go forward with it. Yeah. And I think that boldness is what's really needed inside our companies. Also, to be honest with you, government. I think we need to really relook at how our universities actually supporting basically, in essence, this relationship. I think there's been too much of a distance between what universities think, companies need and what companies think they need. And then it's kind of bizarre because all of a sudden companies come to the university when the students are already quote unquote prepared. Wait a minute, we've got a problem here. Why aren't we having a much more closer relationship with universities to help them understand what are the technologies that are necessary in the future?
Piotr, if I can add something, because there's one aspect that was not mentioned, and there was a question in the questionnaire regarding the role of the highest management in the company.
Yes.
Yeah. So this example of the pharmaceutical company that we started promoting, but we could also give the example of UPC, because I know how Monica and the board was focusing or putting pressure on competencies. So in this company, there was, first of all, the CEO with the digital background, who understands the need of the competencies and skills, and in the digital transformation process of the, let's call it, old school industry. And then they invested also in CDO, Chief Digital Officer, who was responsible to drive this. That's why this project of digital community within the company was established. So that's something new.
One more, Bartek, which is really worth to remember. We need to give people some toys to play, because this is how we drive digital. This is how our kids drive digitality. They just have fun, and we need to create this fun atmosphere for our people to drive digital skills.
Okay,
but in community.
Yeah. This is what our kids do, so we should just observe our kids and then replicate this into work.
Yeah. I have to hang the discussion, because the discussion could go on. I also have some question in mind which I didn't write, because we are running out of time, so we have to finish now. So let me just thank you for the fruitful discussion. Together with me and you was the Bartosz Górczyński from CEO.net, the managing director.
Thank you very much for inviting.
There was Monika Nowak-Toporowicz, CTIO of UPC Poland and Slovakia.
It was great to meet you guys, and I think we can continue for the next couple of hours.
And John Guziak, partner human capital from Deloitte.
Absolute pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for listening, and I'm giving the floor to the studio. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to our colleagues there in Poland. This is European Digital Day, looking at the topics that will impact the future of our world. And next up, it's all about lifelong learning. Now, in around 75% of cases, so in most cases, it really pays for an employer to invest in the continued education of an employee. And certainly lifelong learning is bang on trend right now. But how do we persuade organizations to really put their money where their mouth is? Joining me for our next discussion, I'm delighted to welcome Gulsana Mamadiva, who is Director General on European Integration at the Ministry of Digital Transformation in Ukraine. We have Joel Hellemark, founder of Sana Labs, which is an AI-powered learning platform in Sweden. Mark Seeger is CEO of Polpharma Group, which is one of the leading pharma groups in Central Eastern Europe, and Patrick Warnking, who is the country manager for Google in Switzerland. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm going to start off with a very direct question to you, Joel, because as I said, this is a bang on trend topic right now. Everyone can understand the benefits of lifelong learning. It's certainly a nice to have, but does it really matter?
Of course, I think what we're seeing now with the half-life of skills of 5 years, and for more technical skills, 2 to 3 years, upskilling and reskilling has never been more important. And it's quite worrying that we will have to upskill over 50% of the global workforce, but we don't really have the tools to do that. So much of the tools that we have for learning was built more for compliance use cases and sort of have these Windows 95-esque interfaces. So what we need now is a new generation of intelligent, predictive tools that can create entirely personalized learning experiences. I think the status quo of learning and upskilling is a bit like the status quo of the internet before Google arrived. We have this sort of disparate resources spread all over the web, and we need someone to organize that and make it relevant to us and serve up the right content in the right way at the right time. And that's something, of course, we're hugely passionate about driving at Sana Labs.
And Marcus, how has your company benefited from lifelong learning? How much emphasis do you put on that?
Thank you for the question. So I would like to give you some context. We have in our organization embarked about 5 years ago into a transformational exercise, which was focusing on many dimensions. But it was about opening up and uniting the different companies in our group and to be able to really focus on the patient and customer. And for this, actually, we thought we had to become a leader in digitalization in our space, but also become a leader in innovation and become a learning organization. And this term learning organization, we then really filled with content over time in the last few years. We started a large initiative by making training offerings available to all the employees, also on digital platforms. And we also embarked in parallel on training our management in about the 500 top managers in new leadership concepts, because we really saw there was a generation gap, there were new requirements coming. And then on top of it, we also create the communities, and there I cannot agree more with Joel, because just the learning itself is just one aspect, but it's about bringing people together to share knowledge and to develop through this knowledge and through new innovative ideas. And we've created a very large digital community, which has helped us the last 3 years really bring new concepts in place. So in summary, all these initiatives have made us a more open and resilient organization. And especially during COVID, this has helped us tremendously to develop, to train and to stay motivated following our purpose, which is really helping people to live a healthy life in a healthy world. And we continue to develop new learning modules and have developed, a new platform also where we focus on it. And now, as you might imagine, it's my passion. It's more also on leadership. How do leaders today have to develop to manage teams in a remote setup, and also with the new requirements in terms of motivating, in difficult times as we have right now.
And Gosana, maybe I can bring you in here from a government perspective. When these companies are investing in continued education, how does that impact your digital transformation goals?
Thank you for this question, and this is the all described above as very important, and we feel like and understand that in this goal, upscaling digital skills of population is very important to unite actually government and have this public-private partnership, because of course all the expertise is on the business side and on the private companies, and we have in Ukraine very much successful collaboration with private companies and entities actually to provide products for the development digital skills. And for now we have a national project Digital Education, and we aim to educate 6 million people in 3 years to digital skills. We conduct research, national research in 2019, and discovered that 53% of Ukrainians doesn't have basic digital skills, from which 15% doesn't have digital skills at all. So we launched a big national program on digital literacy, and it consists of two modules, I would say, the online and offline. Online is a platform with edutainment format, TV series, and we have, it's not boring lessons, it's exciting actually exciting lectures and short one with celebrities and experts. It's more than 60 series already on the platform, and we always develop the new one together with private entities and actually with a huge involvement and support business. We cooperate on that. And we also have offline part, and it's more than 6,100 libraries or digital literacy hubs where people can come and actually have these lessons and courses on digital literacy and develop the digital skills on different interesting topics.
And Gosana, I can really see then that this is just as important from a government perspective as it is, you know, on a company perspective and an impact on a company. But Patrick, can I bring you in here, because with your experience at Google, how do companies tackle this need within their business models? Because they're going to have to change a lot of things in order to develop this new learning and commit time to it.
Good morning. Yes, first of all, it's about the value for the customers. And companies hopefully already today focus very much on bringing the best value to their customers, for existing customers, for new customers. We have seen over the last 2 years how that evolved in customer interaction and how important digital has become. So digital has to be a core part. Second, it's about talent. I believe talent will go where they can work on the most interesting projects, where they have the greatest purpose, but also where they are supported in their learning and personal development. And thirdly, that's to the management actually, and to the managers. I think they have the responsibility not only to come up with personal development support and great tools, like Joel mentioned, new tools, but also giving their colleagues and employees time to do it. I think that is one of the biggest hurdles. You need to free up time in the normal working day of a colleague or employee that they can invest in new learning.
But how does a business adapt their business model to accommodate this?
I think if you are convinced that the best innovation for your customers will make your business successful, you should incorporate this lifelong learning into your business model and investing, and rather spend now, let's say, 10% of your time in learning rather than in productivity today, to be successful in the future. So it's a trade-off, being successful today versus being successful long-term for me.
Let me ask all of you a question at this point. How much time per day, per week, per year do you spend on learning, further education? Patrick?
I try to spend 4 hours a week, half a day, actually, and I try to have a written personal development plan for all colleagues and myself. on know-how, skills, and leadership and coaching.
Joel, how about you? 4 hours a week, does that sound like an average time?
I think that sounds very stellar, actually. Most people probably spend significantly less, but I think the lines are blurring as well, especially as we start thinking about learning in the flow of work. If you're an engineer, you're probably spending 2-3 hours a day almost learning new frameworks and so on. And I think that's going to be, we're going to see more and more of that, more ubiquitous learning where the lines are blurred and we don't really know when we're learning or applying the knowledge, sort of ubiquitously integrated into our daily work. Whereas previously it's been quite separated. But I probably, I try to spend maybe like 30 minutes a day on more focused learning, but then it's quite integrated across the day as well.
It's very interesting because as a journalist, I learn almost every day because I'm always reading newspapers and learning about new topics and researching different topics as well. And so it's not very conscious for me. Marcus, what about you?
I think you actually mentioned an interesting concept. What is actually lifelong learning, right? Is it really just related to the job? And I think in my personal case, I think it's more related to my personal development also, right? And I have these topics which fascinate me, being basically, leadership, being also happiness in its content, purpose, all these, motivation in general. So I really try to focus on these areas which are not directly related to what I'm doing, but I also try to learn always a new language. I tried 3 years with Polish, and now I'm starting with a new language again. Also with with an online tool, digital bubble. To really go into it and have my brain not only focused in my personal development on the job itself, which is, as we all know, quite consuming or can be quite consuming. But I think it's also about 30 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, about 30 minutes. Gulsana, how about you?
Yeah, this is actually hard to say because in our work we have also the research analysis and always have a lot of information and the new things to know because we have to be like ahead. Yes, what is going on? But I very agree with what Marcus said. It's also, in my view, important not focus on just in professional development learning, but also have for example, leadership and coaching skill lessons, yes, and also teaching about happiness and I would say hacking the body and biology and how actually our health working and etc. And I think it's also very important with the current pandemic situation because as you know it's taken knowledge actually to have a vaccine, I would say, yes. And this is also important to go through and have this skills to understand what is correct, what is true, what is disinformation. So this is also important side of the learning.
So there's obviously a huge potential out there, but Joel, where is the drive coming from? Is it coming from company leadership recognizing that there are new ways to upskill their employees? Or is it that employees are telling their leaders that they want to build up new skills, or perhaps it's a combination of both?
Yeah, I think to Patrick's point, and then it's coming equally from the teams that are saying, in order to really retain talent, they expect the companies to be driving the learning. And I think more and more what we're seeing is that companies are taking the roles of universities. If we're now going to be like significantly reskilling every 5 to 10 years, the companies would probably take that role. And I think that's going to be interesting. If you take one example, like self-driving cars, I expect Tesla to be one of the largest academies in the world on developing self-driving cars engineers. Or if you take something like design, Apple has actually been very well known to take designers straight out of high school and then teach them on the job.
Are you telling me that universities may become obsolete in the future?
I did not say that. Yeah, no, maybe. I mean, I'm more. I think the companies and industry will take a bigger role in this, and universities will definitely not look like they do today. There's a lot of inefficiencies in a university. It's like a lot of real estate, the faculty that's limited to anyone who could sort of lives in close proximity. So it will definitely look significantly different. And I don't know if we'll call it universities at that point. But I think increasingly companies will become the de facto universities for talent.
Patrick, what do you think are the main challenges for a company to take a step towards investing in lifelong learning for their employees? What are the barriers that are out there?
I think they need to invest time, and that's why I put out the 10%. Of course, I agree with all of you to learn continuously all the time, but you need to be also explicit about the goals and that it is okay to take the time also to close your inbox and all your devices and really focus on learning. Then I believe it's important that companies educate their managers to be great coaches and to help with this conversation. So have a conversation with each employee. How steep is your learning curve, and how we can help you to make your learning curve steeper, and where do you want to go?
Is this maybe where, Gulsana, the governments can come in to incentivize learning for companies, to ensure that companies, the startups that don't have so much capital, can actually afford to invest in their employees?
Sure, this is something I would not say yes that on an investment part in budget, because for example in Ukraine we have a great result with honestly like zero state budget on this, and we collaborate with private entities and business, and because it's good to understand, important to understand the needs, yes, of the business and what exactly is, what directions, what digital skills, and what is actual now, and to make this fit of what actually the business need for the development, and what we can offer, what learning opportunities we should create. So this is, I would say, the circle between the government, private entities, and actually the person, the citizen. And we always have to listen each other, what are the needs, what are the requests, and it is important to be really fast in this, because situation is changing and so much information nowadays. And if we would speak about stable, sustainable kind of national programs, and it's important to admit that government bodies is not such fast, and they are rather reluctant, as in any country actually. Yes, we all have bureaucracy, but working with private entities, it allows us be more flexible, more fast, and adjust actually what we offer to citizens according to the needs. It just I would say require to listen and require this dialogue between all the three main stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. And Marcus, have you ever come across where employees or just people that aren't so, or just don't have time for this continued education? Because time really seems to be the biggest barrier from a company point of view, but I also imagine it's a barrier from a personal point of view as well. How do we overcome that?
Yeah, I think there are three aspects, right? I think first of all, I think the offerings which we provide, or in this context also was the government provide, the question you asked before, where I do think it's really opening up of the universities and working together with the business to offer flexible offerings which you can consume, let's call it, on a bit by bit basis, right? So you don't have to commit the full day. So you can really, so that the offerings are really structured in a way so you can consume them in modules and so ever. I think that's one of them. Secondly, that you're not making this so, I'd say, so stringent in terms of how you offer these, so that can be more modular and more customized to a specific need. And thirdly, that it's also money-wise, that you as an organization try to incentivize this, being it with money or making them available. In this context, I'm just to give you one example, just now we're working with some universities to make some senior development programs on a modular basis available in those topics which I feel as an organization have to develop my leaders, right? But again, opening up state organizations in a way to work together with business in specific needs which we have, and therefore then making this available to also often online, depending on what the topics are, right?
Okay, and we're running out of time, so I just wanted to ask you all very briefly, can Europe lead the way when it comes to lifelong learning? Joel?
I do think so, but we are falling behind, so something would need to change.
Patrick?
Very good foundation and a lot of fantastic universities. So yes, there is a possibility, but we need to invest.
Gulzana?
Definitely sure that is possible. We can do this, and a lot of success we have already gained, but there's always room for improvement.
And finally, Marcus, your thoughts?
Absolutely, I think we do have to lead in this. Otherwise, I think we will actually fall behind, not only in terms of learning, but as a society in total. And secondly, I think we have great, and I'm coming from Switzerland, we have great open universities where education is cheap or almost free for everybody, and that's exactly what it should be. And that's where the government should invest and put their money. Free education, open education for everybody. I think that's the way to go.
Marcus Seeger, Gulzana Mammadeva, Joel Hellemark, and Patrick Warnking, thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are watching European Digital Day 2021. Next in the spotlight, we're looking at upskilling and reskilling. And research tells us that effective reskilling can boost productivity by 6 to 12% and have a lasting impact on success. But what countries are ahead of the pack in terms of progress and in terms of upskilling and reskilling? And who can we learn from? That's our topic. Let's meet our panelists. I'm delighted to welcome Justyna Orlowska, Poland's Prime Minister's High Representative for Government Technology and head of the GovTech Centre. Welcome to you. We're also joined by Jan von Brocke, who is board member of Digital Liechtenstein and the director of the Department of Information Systems at the University of Liechtenstein. Welcome to you as well. And Oskar Steger, who is chair of Digital Day in Sweden and senior advisor to the Wallenberg Foundation, which is one of the world's largest private foundations funding research. It's great to have all of you with us. And Oskar, I wanted to start with you with a very simple question. We've got upskilling, we've got reskilling, and we've got lifelong learning. What are the differences between all these terms?
I think the key difference, the best way to describe it is, I think, going through the lens of reskilling, because then you're actually taking on new knowledge and learning new capacities and getting new insights that will allow you to actually change your career, switch job, or do something that you didn't do before. And upskilling is rather, becoming better and more up to date with the knowledge and skills that you need, more or less, in your current role or job.
And perhaps you can give us, Oskar, an insight into your own reskilling journey, as it were, or upskilling journey.
Yeah, no, but I think I've been very involved in different reskilling schemes going in Sweden. I think the backdrop for this whole conversation we have is the very quick transformation and digitalization sort of wind sweeping over all our countries and industries, where it's obvious that we need new abilities and new capacities, whether in our current role or actually being able to leave roles that is no longer really relevant from a job perspective, or where you have skills that is no longer required, needing to reskill. So I think at the heart of both of these two issues lies, how do you reach the individual to understand what are the capacities and what's the needs, and how can you tailor learning so that it has maximum impact for the individual? That is when we will get the value creation, regardless of who funds it or where you are in an organization or in a society in need of general upskilling.
And Jan, humor me for a moment. I mean, what kind of or attitudes do you get to the idea of upskilling? Because you obviously work with university students who've spent a long time working on their degrees. How do they feel about the fact that, you know, once they've graduated, it's still not over?
I think it's actually really an interesting paradox we are living in, right? So on the one hand, I think we need skilling, upskilling, reskilling. You know, it's all about skills, and education plays such a huge role, I think, to flourish as an individual, but also for an economy. At the same time, nobody seems to have time to graduate and take time, you know, to go through programs anymore. On the one hand, because everybody seems to be so busy and so actively involved in innovation and work, and on the one hand, but also most programs, you know, if you run through them and the moment you are finished, probably the content already is dated again, right? So I think that there's really lots of challenges there that on the one hand, it is super important to reskill, but on the other hand, really, I think we need to rethink the delivery model, how we do that, right? And what I'd love to talk about, and we are pretty active in doing this here in our Liechtenstein ecosystem, is really to develop kind of ecosystems where we can all engage, right? So where you do not go to school and learn and go home again or in your job and work, but where it's all kind of coming together in one sort of experience, digital experience ecosystem. So on the job, on the fly, continuous, cross-sectoral, and that's something really got me excited. How can we do that?
But you're not talking yourself out of a job here yet.
Pardon?
You said you're not talking yourself out of a job here yet. You're not telling me that, you know, universities.
No, I'm not at all. No, but it's really just, you know, what I love is really, you know, to rethink education, and I think we really need to rethink the institutional model and the delivery model, really, how we produce this, and my understanding is really a lot like school more or less is over, and school is not happening just in the school building, you know, in the classroom with the smart teachers, you know, telling you what you know. And I think we know that of course there's primary education, secondary, third education. Of course we know it's continuous education, right? But I think it has come to a point where really also the institutional logic needs to change. So education needs to walk out of the school buildings and out of the university buildings into real life, go there where people are. So not ask people to come to university to learn, but university to go out there to people and engage where they are, and you know, have knowledge on the go, education to go, so to speak, you know. And one thing, how I think we can deliver that, since we are working on new challenges all the time, is really a design-oriented way to educate, right?
Okay,
so it's not going.
Let me just interrupt you on that point and get Justina's reaction to all that. You're hearing that, you know, that we need to change the way that we deliver education, but what's your reaction to that, Justina? And how important is this reskilling and this continuous learning for our economies?
Yeah, I like very much what Jan said about this, that it's not like about there is a school, classroom, and after that, no education. Education is everywhere, in every field. Today, I am in Gdańsk. You know about that. It's the Second World War broke out here in Gdańsk. And what we have here? We have here the Great Museum of the Second World War, which is totally digital, like it is super new technologies implemented. I recommend you to visit. But why I'm talking about that? Because it is very crucial to not to just to teach how to prepare to work, but to prepare to live. because it's gonna be, we will have more and more free time, leisure time, and to spend it effectively. It's not like, okay, so every minute I am going to do in order to do something positive for my job. No, when I'm talking about effective, it means that making us happier, because it is there are plenty of fields which are very, very important, what drives and what make the society going further. It is also psychological thing, and the researchers show that if we are spending our leisure time effectively, then it make us more happier, because when we are just scrolling something in the internet, that's just this not active thing, it is then it make us sad.
Okay,
that's what researchers say. So education in every field, everywhere, not to prepare to work, but to prepare to live.
Well, you're all painting a very positive picture. So where are we? What are the challenges, Oscar? Are we on the right track?
I think we're on the right track, but we have built structures over ages that do not actually foster this type of insights shared by the panel. One concrete example that we've been working on is to try to get engineers, maybe working with dated technologies, to change careers and reskill to become teachers and to become licensed teachers. But it's the universities providing that education, and university starts in Sweden at least, September 1st or January 1st, and you need to be in the classroom. And these are people, very seasoned people. So we need to adapt. Can we start these trainings every week? Can we have it a hybrid of digital and physical? Can you actually start working in the school from day one, and then you actually train to become the licensed teachers in parallel? So I think the whole structures that we've built, we need to change those, and that takes a lot of time, and that's the main challenge for us.
So do you think, Oscar, that things will very much move more online when it comes to education, and how much of our experience over the last 18 months with the pandemic has contributed to that?
The short answer is a lot, because we now understand very clearly also what does work online and does not work online. So I think we will be better in actually creating the offline learnings and interactions and creativity sessions, and knowing exactly when online is appropriate. So I think we know a lot that we didn't really know 2 years ago, but we need to take on the nature of the beast, and that's the structures and the different silos and the interaction between the private and public and academia. And that's very difficult, and it will be interesting to hear Jan, for example, elaborating on that one, where you are.
I can see that you're keen to jump in, Jan.
Absolutely, I can't wait. So I firmly believe that it's all, as you said, it's about the integration of sectors. It's really, we need to work together. We need to learn and work and engage. So I like this notion and this concept of engagement, across sectors, across age groups, across experience levels, for a number of reasons. And that is something probably also interesting relating to what's the optimal size of such structures and ecosystems. Obviously, here in Liechtenstein, we have small ecosystem, which is really supporting this. So very naturally, we would always think in terms of international, cross-sectoral. We would always engage, and so maybe also for larger countries or regions, maybe it's an idea to have more hubs, which kind of then can kind of learn or project kind of this Liechtenstein experience into clusters, and then those clusters, of course, they are networked, which again is very typical here for what we do. And it's another thing I'd like to bring up really, which is what we also in education get our head around a lot is how can we teach students to solve problems that have not even been encountered yet, using tools that have not even been invented yet, right? So I mean, what are we teaching them, right? And that I think relates to another really important aspect. We need to teach way beyond technical, right? Even though, and I'm saying that as an information systems professor, and I'm excited about AI and blockchain and whatnot and digital technologies, but I think it is about really those attitudes and the the characteristics, to be courageous, to be curious, and to be able to process information, to be able to network with others, to think out of the box, which is what also in a world which is so fastly moving is probably the constant that you actually enjoy change and you can master, you can navigate, you can surf the waves really, And this, again, you don't learn in classroom, but you learn it by experience in such engagement hubs or innovation labs, one might call it.
Well, let's get some on the ground reaction. Justina, how are you handling all this in Poland?
Yes, so I am listening to Jan and Oskar, and I am smiling because I totally agree with you. And what we are doing, we also see that it is a huge challenge how to teach unknown, to get ready for the unknown. And what is very important, so I can paraphrase what you, Jan, said. It's like to teach skills to get new skills and all the time,
so to speak.
It is also, of course, okay, some people can think, okay, but I am not creative, I am scared of that. But let's think about small children. They are all creative, and it's very important to make them to stay with that. So creativity, and the third and the last but not least, creativity. So, and what we are doing, for example, you asked me what we are doing. For example, a few weeks ago, we have launched a huge program to buy the tools like 3D printers, microcontrollers, for all the primary schools. And it is like the first thing, like the first to open this discussion in Poland to how to teach those skills to get new skills, because we believe that one more creativity and under creativity, you have, if you think you are scared of speaking loud about your ideas, it is very important to teach students to work together, because in team, you have different characters. And maybe you are shy, but there will be a leader that will dig deeply in order to get your ideas from you, and that is very important. Competencies. The people learn from each other. It is the best way to learn new things.
How does Europe compare with the rest of the world when it comes to reskilling? Justina, do you want to have a quick response on that first?
Yeah, so there are plenty of fields when we are talking about reskilling and upskilling, because but I can see that still it is changing, but still we think about this a little bit in silos. Okay, so there are programs for entrepreneurs, there are programs for teachers, there are programs for students, etc., etc. So, and what was mentioned by my colleagues before me, it was like this intersectional and it is very crucial, and it is changing, and now I think it is crucial to the whole world to do that. Of course, when we are talking about application of this experimentation, I like to look at Finland, where they have a great application of for example, those new technologies, new hardware like 3D printers, etc. Because it doesn't have to be different task, but because the task is like a tool, because, for example, they are creating their own furniture. Okay. And we can say, what for? Yeah, but it is very important because those skills are built through those tasks.
All right, and Oskar, how about you? Who can we learn from, and how well is Europe doing on a global stage?
I think it's very difficult questions to answer, but I think sort of comparing it maybe to the US, I think we have a quite close bond in many countries between sort of the society and the individual, and we sort of take maybe a bit larger responsibility as the officials in actually making sure that the individuals get the training needed. But I would like to quick word on actually those who we are not reaching yet, because I think that the how is pretty obvious. We have the tools and the capacities, but to get real learning, you also as an individual need to understand why should I learn this? And there are big groups in our society that yet they're not interested in new technologies or digitalization. They're on the outside, and trying to get them on the inside is a completely different task than someone on the inside, like inspired and wanting to learn. And I think that's also what we focused on really much in our digital day, really trying to reach those who are not yet insiders in terms of digitalization.
Do you think this is the biggest challenge facing Europe when it comes to this topic?
I think so, and at least for Sweden, that's the case. I think we're pretty advanced in many areas, and it's a small country and a lot of skills and capacities. But there are in Sweden, we're 10 million people. There are some 500,000 people, adults, that do not regularly go on the internet. And what happens with our society when we get such a big group that's not on the inside? Well, we've seen some of the effects of globalization and what type of maybe leadership and type of turbulence it can create when big groups do not feel that they're part of something and they don't see the benefits. So I think there is a big social aspect to this topic.
And how can we get those on the outside into the inside? Jan, a final word from you, perhaps?
Well, I think it is about setting examples, and it's about providing opportunities to engage. So that's again what I'm really excited about. And I would like to invite you all to come to Liechtenstein or get in touch with us here. It's probably kind of the beauty and the tininess of the place in a way, which makes everything very close and very engaged and networked by nature. But it could really happening here, and I enjoy that a lot. Like, so we go to companies, for instance, now from university, we open labs at their facilities. You know, we bring in students, we bring in international colleagues, we bring in other companies, we bring in society to go and to experience, to look at what is a blockchain and how does AI work, and can I see a robot? You can go there with your kids, you know, on the weekends and see that really, and we have initiatives to talk about it, and we. Just this week, we're at the Digital Summit. Loads of people go, and it's in the media, and you make it approachable, and you know, and so that you make it something interesting. I think this is what's important. So don't make it a huge, big policy program only. Like, you need that, but do smaller things which serve as magnets, and also to demonstrate the possible, and to also create some sort of excitement. Develop ecosystems, right? So also in our research, we talk about digital ecosystems. How can you do that? How can you get the right people together? And it's always, in my understanding, it's the doing together, right? When things happen, and that's fantastic.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, that's almost all we have time for today. But before we go, I wanted to bring Diana back into the studio for some closing remarks and some feedback on what we've all heard today. Diana, it's been quite an event today. What are some of the highlights for you?
Well, for me, the highlight was especially that so many good speakers, high-level speakers came together, and not only from one area, but politics, economy, entrepreneurs, and NGOs, and all those stakeholders spoke together. And I think that is beautiful. And from different countries, they exchanged. And yeah, that's basically my highlight.
What do you hope people will take away then from today? Because it was a lot of information.
Yes, that's true. I hope people could learn from other countries what they're doing there, and then look at it and maybe implement it in the same country. It happened with Digital Day with 8 other countries. Maybe there's something else that we can share. And one thing is like the female hackathon that we are organizing now, and maybe that's something that we're gonna do across Europe.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's obviously lots to look forward to. What else can we expect from Digital Days in the future?
I think there will be more engagement of the public, but then also more countries coming on board. And I very much hope that there are more projects that we can collaboratively work together. I think that would be fantastic.
Diana, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and thank you as well for being there for this year's European Digital Days experience. If you want more information, you can head to our website. It's europeandigitaldays.com, where you'll find a replay of all the panel discussions and experts that you've heard today, and of course more on all the countries who've been involved in this year's event. Thanks for being there. Bye-bye.